Biting into a mass-produced chocolate bar today, you are participating in a century-old system of industrial control. The name on the wrapper belongs to Milton Hershey, a man remembered as a benevolent candy maker, but who quietly engineered a corporate utopia designed to own the lives of his workers. How did a failed caramel salesman build an empire where the company owned the homes, the schools, the transit, and the very streets his employees walked on? The story of this totalizing control begins not with success, but with repeated, crushing failure. Born in 1857 in rural Pennsylvania, Milton Hershey grew up in a strict Mennonite farming community. His early life was defined by the instability of his father, a relentless dreamer whose speculative business ventures constantly collapsed. Seeking a practical trade, his mother apprenticed young Milton to a local printer. He despised the rigid indoor work and deliberately got himself fired. This rebellion led to a second apprenticeship with a confectioner in Lancaster, where he finally discovered a natural talent for boiling sugar. In 1876, at just 18 years old, he borrowed money from his aunt to start his own candy business in Philadelphia. It was the era of the Centennial Exposition, and he hoped to capitalize on the massive crowds. Instead, he spent 6 grueling years working 14-hour days, barely surviving on street cart sales before the business went completely bankrupt. He fled to Denver to join his father in the silver rush, but arrived too late to find wealth. He did, however, find work with a local confectioner who taught him a crucial secret. He learned that adding fresh milk to caramel prevented the candy from spoiling quickly and gave it a distinct, chewy texture. Armed with this new technique, he moved to New York City to try manufacturing again. He found initial success, but logistical nightmares and a lack of capital quickly strangled the operation. By 1886, he was bankrupt once more, returning to Lancaster penniless and shunned by his family. Desperate, he began making caramels in a small warehouse, using the fresh milk technique he learned in Denver. An English candy importer tasted them, loved the quality, and placed a massive order that Hershey could not afford to fulfill. He convinced a skeptical local bank cashier to lend him the funds based solely on the importer's contract. That single loan saved his career and birthed the Lancaster Caramel Company. Within a few years, he was shipping thousands of pounds of candy across the country and employing hundreds of workers. Milton Hershey had finally become a millionaire, but he was already looking for a new obsession. In 1893, he attended the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, a glittering showcase of global innovation. While other industrialists marveled at massive steam engines and electric lights, Hershey was captivated by a German chocolate-making machine. He immediately purchased the machinery right off the exhibit floor and had it shipped back to Pennsylvania. At the time, milk chocolate was a rare luxury item, imported from Switzerland and entirely inaccessible to the working class. Hershey saw an opportunity to mass-produce this luxury, turning it into a cheap commodity for the American public. He shocked his peers by selling his highly profitable caramel company in 1900 for $1 million. He retained only the rights to his small chocolate experiments and the chocolate-making machinery. With a massive reserve of liquid capital, he began scouting for a location to build the largest chocolate factory the world had ever seen. He needed a place with abundant fresh milk, clean water, and desperate, reliable labor. He found exactly what he needed in Derry Township, the very same rural, impoverished area where he had been born. The local farmers were struggling, and land was incredibly cheap. He quietly began buying up adjacent farms, amassing over 1,000 acres before anyone realized his true intentions. Groundbreaking for the massive new factory began in 1903, right in the middle of an empty cornfield. Skeptics mocked the project as a guaranteed failure, wondering how a factory so far from major urban centers could ever find enough workers. But Hershey had a master plan that went far beyond mere chocolate production. When the factory finally opened in the summer of 1905, it was surrounded by the foundational grid of a carefully engineered corporate utopia. He was not simply offering jobs. He was building an entirely self-contained ecosystem where his corporation was the sole provider of every human necessity. This began with housing, which was explicitly designed to tether the workforce to the company's financial ecosystem. The company constructed comfortable, modern homes, but the corresponding payroll ledgers revealed the catch. Rent was automatically deducted from a worker's paycheck before they ever saw a single dime of their wages. He then established absolute monopolies over the town's essential services. Surviving utility grid blueprints from the era show how the Hershey Water Company and the Hershey Electric Company routed every drop of water and spark of power directly from the factory's own generators to the workers' homes. To manage the massive flow of capital generated by his workers, he founded the Hershey Trust Company in 1905. The original banking charter explicitly positioned this institution to handle worker savings and issue mortgages. If an employee wanted to buy a home rather than rent, they had to borrow the money directly from their employer. Even physical mobility was controlled by the corporation. The official trolley route maps of the newly formed Hershey Transit Company demonstrated how every track radiated outward from the factory gates, ensuring workers could be easily funneled from neighboring towns directly to the production floor. On the surface, this looked like unparalleled corporate benevolence. Workers enjoyed paved streets, indoor plumbing, and cheap electricity at a time when most rural Americans lacked all three. However, the psychological toll of this totalizing environment soon became apparent. Milton Hershey essentially acted as an unelected mayor, police chief, and landlord all rolled into one. The company's private security force monitored the town's activities, reporting any moral infractions or whispers of unionization directly to management. In 1909, Hershey expanded his vision of control to the next generation by establishing the Hershey Industrial School for orphan boys. The original deed of trust legally transferred vast amounts of company stock to the school, ensuring it would be funded in perpetuity. This institution was designed to mold young, destitute boys into ideal, compliant workers. They were trained in agricultural and industrial trades, providing a steady, loyal pipeline of future laborers for the chocolate factory. Through the 1920s, the town of Hershey, Pennsylvania, flourished as a highly profitable, perfectly synchronized machine. The Hershey chocolate bar became a national staple, and the town itself was heavily marketed to the public as a harmonious workers' paradise. When the Great Depression struck in 1929, Hershey refused to lay off his workers, instead embarking on a massive construction campaign to keep them employed. He ordered the construction of a lavish hotel, a massive community building, and a sports arena. While this kept the town from starving, it also deepened the workers' absolute dependency on the company for survival. Beneath the polished veneer of the newly constructed theaters and manicured parks, a quiet, desperate resentment was beginning to boil over. The illusion of total harmony shattered violently in the spring of 1937. Inspired by successful labor actions in the auto industry, Hershey workers organized a sit-down strike inside the chocolate factory. They demanded better wages, shorter hours, and an end to the paternalistic surveillance that dictated their private lives. Milton Hershey was deeply offended, viewing the strike not as a labor dispute, but as a personal betrayal by his own workforce. The company quietly encouraged local dairy farmers, who were losing money every day the factory was closed, to take matters into their own hands. A mob of thousands descended on the factory, violently evicting the striking workers with clubs and pitchforks. The bloody clash forced the state government to intervene and mandate a fair union election. The workers eventually voted to unionize, officially breaking Hershey's absolute unilateral control over their labor. Yet the architectural and financial control he had engineered over the town's infrastructure remained entirely intact. The true mechanism of this enduring power was hidden within the updated legal charter of the Hershey Trust Company. This document permanently bound the majority voting shares of the Hershey Chocolate Corporation to the Milton Hershey School Trust. The trust ledgers from the era dictate that the school's board of directors effectively controls the multi-billion-dollar candy empire to this day. Because the board oversees both the company and the town's massive entertainment assets, local governance is still heavily influenced by corporate interests. The county tax assessment rolls reveal that the trust remains the largest landowner in Derry Township, holding thousands of acres of prime real estate. This massive land monopoly ensures that any significant civic development must still align with the financial priorities of the Hershey legacy. Milton Hershey died in 1945, leaving behind a conflicted legacy of immense philanthropy and absolute authoritarian control. His workers won their collective bargaining rights, but the town itself remains a corporate fiefdom masquerading as a traditional municipality. The original houses, streets, and utilities are still inextricably linked to the financial health of a single candy company. Today, modern tech companies are once again building corporate campuses with integrated housing and proprietary transit, echoing the very systems Hershey pioneered. This raises a fundamental question about the price of such security. Would you trade your personal autonomy for guaranteed housing, utilities, and a lifelong job? Or is the suffocating control of corporate paternalism too high a price to pay? The systems that govern our daily lives are rarely created by accident. They are engineered by those who understand how to leverage power. Subscribe to the channel to uncover more hidden historical origins of the institutions, laws, and financial architectures that shape our modern world.